Ken Klippenstein of The Intercept is on a bit of a roll. He recently received documents from the United States Navy that appear to conflate socialists with terrorists and list the left wing ideology alongside and equal to neo Nazis. Now, this comes from a section of the training document subtitled Study Questions, which includes the following: anarchists, socialists, and neo Nazis all represent which terrorist ideological category? The correct answer, according to them, was political terrorism, according to a military source briefed on the training. So, no, wait a minute here. Neo Nazis are not the same as socialists and anarchists. Neo Nazis are far more dangerous than socialists. Imagine thinking that, like, oh, the people that want more democracy in the workplace, because that's what socialism is, and a larger welfare state is the same as the people who want to either, minorities either dead or deported, and the creation of a white-only ethno state. That's not the same. And look, anarchists. So I did a little work in anarchists. I looked into it a little bit more because, there's the popular perception of anarchy being like no rules, violence, beating people up, doing whatever you want. And that's not exactly true, okay? There's a lot of different groups involved in anarchism, and it really kind of depends on the flavor, right? Whether or not they could be considered violent or dangerous. And so it turns out there's a lot of different levels of anarchist thought. But simply put, I'm just going to go with the simple definition here. Anarchism is a political philosophy that holds that ruling classes and the state are undesirable, unnecessary, and harmful, or alternatively, as opposing authority and hierarchical organization in the conduct of human relations. So that is a very simple definition of what general anarchy is. So now proponents of anarchism, as a result, advocate for stateless societies based on non-hierarchical voluntary associations. However, anarchist schools of thought can differ fundamentally, supporting anything from extreme individualism to complete collectivism. And so, again, that is a wide-ranging belief system. Now, much of anarchist economics and legal philosophy do reflect anti-authoritarianism, anti-statist, and libertarian interpretations of far left and socialist policies, such as communism, collectivism, as well as free market, individualism, mutualism, participism, and syndicalism, among other libertarian socialist philosophies. So now, in America, and again, different forms of anarchy for different forms or different countries, I should say. In America, Hosea Warren is widely regarded as the first American anarchist, and the 4-page weekly paper he edited during 1833 was actually called The Peaceful Revolutionist. Peaceful revolution. So, well, obviously, if it's a peaceful revolution, it can't be violent. So, I'm just saying. Now, an important concern for American individualist anarchism was free love. So this is another fun fact. Free love particularly stressed women's rights, since most sexual laws at the time discriminated against women. Again, doesn't necessarily sound that entirely bad or violent. So, nonetheless, there's a lot of different strains of anarchism. As I said, most of them, or the vast majority of them, don't actually call for violence. Now, there is one that does, and that's insurrectionary anarchism, obviously. It's in the name, and they believe that, no, you should employ violence. So now, I don't agree with that. And most anarchists also do not agree with that. For example, schools like anarcho-pacifism, which completely rejects the use of violence in any form for any purpose. This is actually practiced by Henry David Thoreau. So, yeah, if you put anarchists and socialists in there, it really seems to be a ridiculous catch-all. And it really shows you how committed the military is in maintaining, of course, the status quo, which is pro-capitalist. So, and Emma Goldman is also a famous anarcho-feminist. And so I was reading about that as well. So, now the document, which is titled Introduction to Terrorism / Terrorist Operations, is part of a longer training manual recently disseminated by the Naval Education Training and Command Navy Tactical Training Center in conjunction with the Center for Security Forces. The training is designed for Masters at Arms or the Navy's internal police. So again, they're teaching the Navy internal police that socialism bad, anarchism bad, and it's completely the same as white supremacy and neo-Nazism, which again, as I've shown, it's not at all the same. They're absolutely different. Now, the source, the military official who spoke to Klippenstein, said, quote, "This is just ineffective training because whoever is directing the Navy anti-terror curriculum would rather vilify the left than actually protect anything." And I think that's 100%. Despite the fact, they say, the most prominent threat is domestic right-wing terror. True. Klippenstein also goes on to explain that both the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security have identified white supremacists as the deadliest terror threat to the United States. Not socialists, not anarchists, but again, white supremacists. And we have proof of that. You could just look at the death toll from people who are white supremacists. And not only that, but you can listen to the FBI. And the FBI, understand, the FBI is not a pro-left organization. No, they have traditionally targeted leftist thought leaders. Went after Martin Luther King Jr. told the guy to kill himself. You know, that's obviously content warning. But that's what they have traditionally done. So understand that they are not in favor and on the left. So now there are people on the right wing that are like, oh my God, I can't believe how leftist of an organization the FBI is. In fact, the recent conspiracies by Tucker Carlson, basically said, I can't believe the FBI would lead the invasion of the Capitol building on January 6th. Because they're aligned with Antifa or Black Lives Matter. That's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Not true at all. No, the FBI, but they're actually right about this. Back in September of 2020, FBI Director Christopher Wray, in testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee, said that white supremacists have been responsible for the most lethal attacks of the last decade, and that they comprise the biggest chunk of our domestic terrorism portfolio. The biggest. Now, a spokesman for the Chief of Naval Personnel provided a statement to the Intercept, basically kind of backtracking here. This training is not connected with the recent DoD or Navy anti-extremism training, and the course material is not meant to promote any opinion or judgment and represents no policy statement. Oh. Asked about the debate over how to respond to the domestic terror threat, Kevin Klein, a former FBI assistant special agent in charge at the Bureau's New Haven field office, agreed that the white supremacist threat was serious, but warned that any response must respect constitutionally protected activity, like free speech. No matter what we do in responding to the domestic terrorism problem, the Constitution cannot be a casualty. And Klippenstein also points out in this report that while the right has been vocal with concerns about being unfairly targeted for political opinions, media coverage of the Biden administration's focus on domestic extremism has paid considerably less attention to what it might mean for movements on the left, including Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and the environmental movement. Internal FBI documents he reported on back in 2019 specifically listed anarchists and environmental extremists among counterterrorism priorities. Environmental extremists. Who the hell are those? I've never seen an example of this. Like, are you talking about people who chain themselves to line 3 or whatever, or to oppose the Keystone XL pipeline? Is that a quote unquote environmental extremist? Apparently, apparently. And again, that gets in the way of capitalism. That's anti-capitalist behavior, because you are actually pushing back against a large corporation that plans to despoil that land in the name of profit. But really, they make it sound like groups like Avalanche are going around and blowing up nuclear reactors, or Mako reactors or whatever, to kind of complete that reference. But that's not what's happening. These people are protecting oftentimes tribal land and water sources that are incredibly important, and pushing back against these large corporations, which, by the way, buy their way into office, lobby politicians that will rubber stamp these gigantic projects that end up doing a lot of harm to people's lives and homes. But again, right-wing, extremists. And here's the thing. What's happening right now is right-wing extremists were shooting immigrants as a result of the rhetoric of Donald Trump. Or people like Dylan Roof had attacked black churches, because of their political leanings. Incels attacking cheerleaders because of the pushback against feminism and the feminization of men. That's all right wing ideological terror. That's all being talked about on the right wing. So, yet in the same testimony where he debunked Trump's characterization of Antifa, Wray had also suggested the Bureau was pursuing any number of properly predicted investigations into what we would describe as violent anarchist extremists. And while he rebutted baseless claims that Antifa had instigated January 6th, Wray also said, quote, "That doesn't mean we're not looking, and we'll continue to look." Well, of course they will. And look, it's not as bad as it was during the Obama administration, to be fair. Okay? It's still pretty bad. But during the Obama administration, when they started even looking at all into right-wing terror groups, which again proved to be a deadly mistake. As soon as Republicans, conservatives, Rush Limbaugh found out about it, their heads exploded. Oh, why are you looking into us? Why are you looking into us? You need to look into the violent Muslims in the left wing. And again, as I just mentioned, deadly mistake, because you had an incredible rise in right-wing domestic terror incidences because the Obama administration was too scared of what Fox News would say and didn't look into that. And during the Trump administration, they finally started looking into it more. But it looks like the Biden administration is pulling back on it and saying, oh, no, white supremacists and neo-Nazis, the same as socialists. Because, of course. And by the way, there's one right here. Former FBI agent Mike German pointed out that they've continued to look into black groups, black activist groups that have been targeting for years. Back in 2019, Klippenstein obtained internal documents revealing the FBI's counterterrorism priorities in the fiscal years of 2018 to 2020. While it included right-wing groups like militia extremists, sovereign citizens, white supremacy, it also included black identity extremists and anarchist extremists. The FBI documents suggested without evidence that the term black identity extremist grew out of the Black Lives Matter movement, which is not typically associated with violence. The document went on to describe a cryptic program codenamed Iron Fist, in which the FBI would use undercover employees and recruit confidential informants among black identity extremist groups. However, they met, of course, with not a lot of headway. They really did not get into those groups. The FBI's Iron Fist program was concerning enough that then Representative Cedric Richmond, now a senior advisor to President Biden, grilled the FBI director about it back in 2019. And according to the military source, the training materials also include a Black Panther's fist symbol on a slide of terror organizations with Al-Qaeda. So great comparison, y'all. Comparing Black identity extremists with Al-Qaeda. Fantastic. Now you tell me if those groups are the same. You tell me that they've got the same body counts in America. If not, then no, they're definitely not the same. The fact is that you have the FBI and the government and the military that are falsely equating leftist movements that are challenging capitalism as we know it right now. They're the same as actual terror groups that have been overwhelmingly violent in this country. I don't buy it. And I know I'm going to get a lot of, that's socialism. They're killing tens of hundreds of billions of people. The Pol Pot, Mao. For one, of course, those are authoritarian governments. I don't agree with that at all. Not authoritarian. As far as places like Cuba, did you know that Cuba just developed a COVID-19 vaccine that is 92% effective and completely free for everyone? It's free. 92% effective. That's almost as effective, just about as effective as the top tier vaccines here in America, the Pfizer and the Moderna shot. It's a three shot vaccine and is 92% effective. They can do that despite all the sanctions and all the garbage that, you know, the United States, it does to them. Weird. The sanctions, the embargoes, which, by the way, are super unpopular with the American people. Why are we continuing to sanction and embargo Cuba? Oh, right. That's because it's socialism. It's communism. It almost seems like the biggest problem with socialism abroad is the fact that it exists. And we can't have that. And that's why the West continues to try to kill it. Honestly, if it doesn't work, like everybody claims, well, then just let it fail on its own. We don't have to sit there and do punishing sanctions and embargoes. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. Prove your superiority and just let it fail. I'm just saying, unless, of course, you're afraid that it's not going to fail on its own, which explains classifying socialism as political terrorism. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.